Hi, my name is Nick Paicos and my shop is the Paicos Aesthetic, and in this video I'm going to show you how to turn this into this and share with you all of the tips and tricks I've learned about epoxy resin over the last 7 years and how to make epoxy resin river tables. So if you're interested in learning about that topic, stick around. Hey guys, so the first thing you want to do is flatten your project. I'm using a hickory slab here and I'm using my CNC machine to flatten the project, but there are many different ways to flatten it. If you have a router sled, you can hand plane it. However you want to do it, flattening is the first step. Once you're done flattening your piece, you want to cut out the section that you're going to put your epoxy resin in. So I use my CNC machine for this, and this is showing you the river cutout that I designed for this particular piece. You can use a jigsaw, you can use a bandsaw. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You're just cutting out that center section so you can add your epoxy to it. And this is showing what it looks like after it's been flattened and your river section has been cut. Because I used the CNC machine, I can do that step-like cutout, which just gives you a little bit different shades of the epoxy, which is a kind of a cool feature. I really like doing that. I've seen it on other builds. I decided to incorporate it here and it looks really good. So this next scene is showing your mold. So I use 3/4 inch melamine, which you can get from Lowe's or Home Depot. It's 2-inch thick walls, pocket holed into the side. And what you're going to do is, after you've pocket holed all around, creating your the place where your wood and your epoxy is going to go, you want to put a layer of caulk in all the seams on all the corners. That's going to keep the epoxy from leaking out. The next thing you want to do is line the whole inside with something called tuck tape. And this is also something you can get from Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon. And this is going to create a non-stick surface for the epoxy. So when you pour your epoxy into the mold, you let it set for a couple of days. You go to take it out. If you don't put this stuff down, your epoxy may stick to the melamine. So the next part is getting your piece inside the mold. And you can see here I've secured the pieces down to the mold with clamps. And this is because if you don't, the epoxy can get underneath your mold. You don't want that. You'll also notice I put a ring of caulking around where the epoxy is going to be poured. That's just so if you go a little bit over, the epoxy won't spill all over the top of your project. And you can plane that away, sand it away after, but it just creates less work for later on. So that's a good step. And then also you'll see that I've already sealed the inside of the project. So where the epoxy is going to be touching, I've sealed it. So what does that mean? This is one of the most important steps that you can do to create a bubble-free epoxy. And that is, wood is porous. It has pores in it, little openings. So if you don't seal it, air bubbles will come out of the wood into your epoxy and create air bubbles. To seal it, you want to use a special kind of epoxy. And I use tabletop epoxy. They make something called penetrating epoxy, which is specifically designed to seal wood. It gets into the wood, seals those pores. You just do a thin layer, brush it on to your project. And then when you go to pour your final layer, your final big layer of epoxy, the wood is sealed, no air can escape. Okay, so that's a very important step. Don't miss that part. All right, we're mixing our epoxy resin here. So this is a 1 3/4 inch thick slab. So I'm using something called Total Bolt's Deep Fathom Epoxy. It lets you pour up to 2 inches in a single pour. If you use other kinds of epoxy, like say you use tabletop epoxy, which is meant to be put on as a thin 1/8 inch thick top coat, if you tried to pour that 2 inches at a time, it would generate too much heat, it would cure wrong, it would crack. it would not come out good. So Deep Fathom epoxy is specifically designed to be able to make deep pours, and it's great for doing river tabletops like this project. So here's the fun part. This is when we're going to pour our epoxy into the mold. So you want to have yourself, you're doing a big pour like this. This particular pour took 9 gallons of epoxy. So you want to plan on that. You want to have a bucket that can accommodate 9 gallons. Make sure you have everything ready to go when you do your pour. Deep Fathom epoxy takes a lot longer to set than epoxies that are meant to be poured in thinner coats. So you have a lot of working time, but still you want to make sure you have your mold all set up. Everything's ready to go before you do your actual pour. You're going to have bubbles when you're pouring. Don't worry about that for now. We'll take care of those in a later step. So this is what it looks like after you have your pour all done. I'm set with the pour here. You'll notice all the bubbles. So what we do to take care of those is you're going to get yourself a blowtorch. Again, Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon, you can get them there. You're going to use the blowtorch to go over the surface of the epoxy, not touching the tip of the flame to the epoxy. You want it about an inch away, and just move it quick back and forth over the epoxy, and it's going to pop all those bubbles. I usually do this 3 to 4 times, spaced out by about 5 minutes after I do my pour, and then I'm all set. And that takes care of all the bubbles. Then you want to let your epoxy set. And with this particular kind of epoxy, I believe it's 5 days of cure time, but again, it says it on the bottle. You don't want to flatten it, reflatten it before it has time to cure, because it'll be soft and it will not work well. So make sure you're giving it the full time to cure. Again, I'm using my CNC to flatten the epoxy. It's the easiest way for me to do it, but you can use a hand planer, you can use a router cart, whatever you have available in your shop. After you've sanded your project down, this is the best part, putting on the finish. In this particular case, I'm using walrus oil. It's a really good product. I like it a lot. Goes on very easy, gives the wood a very nice, penetrates into the wood very nice, gives the wood a really nice shine. And this is the final result. It comes out beautiful. I really like Tabletop's Deep Fathom epoxy. This is emerald green coloring that I've added to it as well. And it's just beautiful with the hickory wood. You'll notice, because I'm installing this in our laundry room and we have the hot water, cold water sources for the washer and dryer, I had to cut some holes in the epoxy. I did that using my drill press and jigsaw to cut those out quick so this could fit into there. So when installing the tabletop over the washer and dryer, the first thing I did is bust out my DeWalt laser level. This thing works awesome. It ensures that you get a perfectly level surface. I use this all the time for installing things in the house, paintings, pictures, frames, all that good stuff. So here I'm using the laser level to make sure I'm perfectly level. I'm setting it an inch above the top of the washer dryer, and I'm going to put in 1 inch thick by 3/4 inch brackets all around where the washer dryer are, and my epoxy tabletop is going to sit right on top of that. So here I need to make sure that my tabletop is cut to fit this wall exactly. And if you've ever tried to do built-in things in your home, you know that absolutely no wall is perfectly square. You can't count on 90-degree angles. Everything's a little bit different. So it's really in your best interest to create a template. In this case, I did it out of, it looks like 3/4 inch plywood that I had left over from another project. But you can use this to really get in, fine tune how your piece is going to fit in. And you do that by scribing to the wall. I don't have a video on how to scribe, but there's tons of other YouTube videos out there. Check that out to learn how to scribe something to a wall. Create your template, and then you can use that template to put directly on your tabletop, draw out a line, and then use your track saw to cut it out. And this is the final product. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you learned something. Please reach out in the comments, ask questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And if you like the content, this helped you out a little bit, if you could like and subscribe to my channel, that would be a huge help. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Take care.